At least 83 people are reported dead, including 25 children, following a suspected chemical weapons attack in Syria. We want to warn you very carefully that the images from this story are extremely disturbing. At least 350 more were said to have been wounded in this attack happened at the rebel-held city of Idlib. And here we go. A top Syrian military officer has denied Syria used any chemical weapons, while Russian media, citing the defense ministry, says that it was a government airstrike that hit an alleged rebel chemical weapons stash. The UN Security Council will meet this morning at 10 a.m. to discuss this attack. In a statement, President Trump condemned the reprehensible and intolerable attack while shifting blame to his predecessor, President Obama, saying in part, quote, this: "These heinous actions by the Bashar al-Assad regime are a consequence of the past administration's weakness and irresolution." President Obama said in 2012 that he would establish a red line against the use of chemical weapons and then did nothing. The Trump administration statement criticizing President Obama for a lack of action in Syria contrasts with a tweet from Trump in September of 2013, which reads this: "President Obama, do not attack Syria. There is no upside and tremendous downside. Save your powder for another and more important day." Joe, let's just lay it out here and talk about this. First of all, on this show, we've been extremely critical all along.
Right.
To the Obama administration for their inaction or lack of strength as it pertains to Syria. Having said that, this is on Trump's watch. What do you make of his first reaction to this?
Well, first of all, it's our jobs to criticize presidents, whether it's what George W. Bush was doing in Iraq or what Barack Obama was doing in Syria. That's what we get paid to do. What the President of the United States gets paid to do is lead us together as a country in times of crises. And him carping at the last president for the last president's failures is unbecoming as, let's say, Barack Obama carping at George W. Bush. I don't remember Obama doing that specifically in this sort of crisis, but there always was that sort of carping. But by his own statement, Donald Trump now puts the responsibility on his shoulders. Okay, you're criticizing Barack Obama for what he did not do in 2012. What are you going to do 5 years later? Because now you're the president of the United States, and I personally don't care what he tweeted in 2013. I care what he said yesterday, and I care what he said today. So, Mika, the way I read that is, he's being critical of the president for doing nothing when Assad used chemical weapons. Well, Assad used chemical weapons. So what is Donald Trump, president of the United States in 2017, going to do other than cozy up to Assad's #1 enabler in the world, Assad? Well, unless he's a complete hypocrite, and we have every reason to believe that he is, he will do something about this. He will take strong, aggressive action with the world community. And Mark Halperin, he will stop this. He can't criticize Barack Obama on one hand for turning a blind eye to Assad's chemical weapons in 2012 and then allow it to happen in 2017 and do absolutely nothing while this Holocaust unfurls before our eyes.
Why is this such a big week? Because he's dealing with three of the most intractable foreign policy challenges the last three presidents have dealt with. How to get North Korea to stop having missiles and nuclear weapons. How to get China to stop taking advantage of the United States on the economy, and how to get the Syrian civil war to end, how to get Assad out of power and Russia's influence there to diminish. And in all of those cases, as you said, Joe, the onus is on him now. He doesn't like how President Obama dealt with those three issues. This is the week when he's got an opportunity. You want to put it in a different way to say it's not a crisis, it's an opportunity. This is his opportunity to say, I didn't like what President Obama did on those three issues. I'm going to do it differently. The statements yesterday, though, as you suggested, didn't really show a roadmap to how he's going to deal with Assad any differently, except to say we're going to leave him in power.
Pointing fingers back 5 years ago does nothing for what happened yesterday and the day before and what's happening every day. Shane Harris, why don't we just face the grim reality? It seems that there's going to be very little that the United States of America can do to persuade Russia to intervene in Syria. And there's very little Donald Trump's going to be able to do to get China to intervene in North Korea in a meaningful way.
Well, I think that, we went earlier to the question of people in the foreign policy community having anxiety about Trump's knowledge of North Korea or Russia or some of these issues. In Syria, this is a place where he could actually try to do something, and it would be more than the previous administration had done. And I think actually he would win a lot of points and build confidence with people, even holdovers from the Obama administration, who were deeply frustrated with the fact that we drew a red line and then did nothing about Bashar al-Assad's use of chemical weapons. So even moving from sort of point zero forward a little bit more and trying to work out some kind of response would be more than the previous administration did and potentially give him the opportunity to say, look, I'm trying. There is no perfect answer to any of these problems. It's not sitting in a box or on a shelf someplace, but he could at least try to start do something, and he would actually be making some more progress.
So remember, it was just last week Secretary of State Rex Tillerson said the fate of Bashar al-Assad is up to the Syrian people, which was a departure from at least the rhetoric from the Obama White House that Assad needed to leave. So what are the answers? There are no easy ones in Syria. Now President Trump faces the same finite list of potential actions that vexed the Obama administration for years. He could put American boots on the ground, something President Obama categorically ruled out, although there are special forces there. He could establish a no-fly zone and risk having to shoot down Russian or Turkish fighter jets who stray into the area. He could train fighters and supply weapons to so-called moderate rebels, an option that's failed in the past and carries a big risk of inadvertently arming terrorists. He could push neighboring Arab and Muslim majority countries to step into the fight and establish safe zones for refugees. Joining us now, member of the Syrian opposition's High Negotiations Committee, Basma Kodmani. Also with us, MSNBC foreign correspondent Ayman Mohaldin. Welcome to you both. Basma, let me begin with you. From your perspective, what happened yesterday? These pictures shot across the world, horrifying everyone who saw them, of children suffocating to death, foaming at the mouth. What happened in Syria?
The testimonies are very clear. Russian plane, Russian-made plane, maybe piloted by a Syrian, but was shelled those areas, and children, women were the most attacked, those who suffered most, who received those attacks, and who in fact died because they are more vulnerable and suffocate more easily than men. So it was an attack on women and children. It was an attack on civilians, not on any military targets there. We do not know that any legitimate military target was hit. All we know is that these civilians have died in the dozens, and this is an aircraft that is a Sukhoi, a Russian-made aircraft that bombed the area with chemical weapons. We do not know clearly if these are sarin gas or chlorine. These are banned weapons, banned by the agreement that was concluded in 2013 under UN resolutions and the Obama administration with Russia, that Syria had dismantled entirely its chemical weapons arsenal and is now will not use them again. Well, it has used them again and again against children and women.
Well, the world community has done, as you know, unfortunately, tragically, more than anybody else. The world community, Western democracies, the United States, they've done absolutely nothing while 500,000 Syrians have died. What would you have the United States, our allies in Europe, and anyone else who wants to be part of a coalition of the willing to stop these attacks against civilians, what would you have the Western democracies do?
Look, I think the Syrians are watching and waiting to see if any leader in this world, and particularly President Trump, is going to go beyond statements of outrage. We've had enough of those over 6 years and failure to do anything about it. Now, I think, first of all, the Syrian regime's air force should be grounded, never allowed to fly again. And I think if President Trump can can speak to President Putin in Russia, who says he wants a political exit now, as an exit strategy from Syria, and wants a political settlement. Maybe he can ask that he delivers Assad. Assad should not fly. Iranian forces who support Assad, who actually fight for Assad, because Assad has almost lost his army, has no military capacity of his own anymore. Well, he can maybe rein in those Iranians, push them out, push them backwards, so that they are not fighting Syrians everywhere in the country and encouraging jihadism. I think what we are seeing is Assad is manufacturing terrorists every day, and is now asking the international community to come and be there and propose himself as their ally to fight terrorism. Can we see that this is the trap that Assad has put to the international community? That President Trump is now seeing Assad could stay. These statements are a blank check for Assad to continue, and that is how the Syrians yesterday read the attack.
Yep.
All right. Osman Kodmani, thank you so much for being with us. We greatly appreciate it. Willie Geist, it does seem to me, while arming rebel factions across Syria now is far more dangerous today than it would have been 5 years ago, when there actually were moderate factions there still fighting. Certainly the world community should be able to figure out a way to enact a no-fly zone and let the Russians know that we're going in, and that's what we're doing, that Western democracies cannot stand by any longer and watch 3-year-old children gassed by Russian airplanes, whether it were Syrian pilots dropping the weapons of mass destruction or Russians.
Yeah, we're going to have elected officials, senators, and congressmen on today, many of them, and we'll be asking them about this question. But, Joe, we could go back to tapes, you, Mika, and me sitting here over the last 6 years and having this exact conversation, seeing pictures come through of chemical weapons attacks in Syria and saying, how long are we going to stand by? Well, now it's been 6 years, and Ayman Mohyeldin, there are 5 million people who've left the country, 500,000 killed, 6 million people internally displaced in Syria. A lot of people this morning, after seeing those pictures yesterday, saying, do something. But that's a lot more difficult than it sounds. What's the most realistic approach the United States and the West can take?
I mean, if there was such an easy answer to that, Willie, I'm sure they would have considered it by now. But, you know, you're raising a lot of very good questions. One, and we heard that recommended there by Besma, grounding the Syrian Air Force. The United States could, along with the members of Arab countries that are part of this coalition, carry out airstrikes against Syrian Air Force targets to prevent them from carrying out these types of barrel bombs, these crude barrel bombs, or chemical attacks on targets in various parts of the country. That could be one immediate military option on the table, but there is a lot of complexity with carrying out military actions in Syria. Keep in mind that President Trump has met with the president of Egypt on Monday. He's meeting with King Abdullah of Jordan, two countries on opposite sides of this conflict. So President Trump has to navigate in the Arab world and in the Muslim world different opinions and strategies. The president of Egypt has said that the Syrian government and the Syrian Arab army, that belonging to the government of Assad, should be supported. King Abdullah of Jordan today is probably going to make the argument, as he has made all along, that President Assad of Syria has to go. So President Trump is waking up to a reality of very different interests in the Middle East. Now, if you add to that the complexities of things like the Muslim travel ban that has alienated some Arab and Muslim countries, you'll start to see why it's difficult to get their support when the United States wants to go into action in Syria, if that's the course they decide to do.
Mika, I want to follow up on what Willie said, because it is so important. We could go to tape over the past 6 years, and we could find one leader after another leader coming on this show, and when we say people are dying, they're using barrel bombs, they're using chemical weapons, they're using weapons of mass. Everybody that comes on the show has always said, well, it's hard, it's tough, it's difficult, we don't know what to do. Yes, we know that. But as Henry Kissinger said, you rarely, when you're a leader of this country, you rarely get to choose between a good decision and a bad decision. It's usually choosing between a bad decision and a worse decision. Barack Obama and his administration refused to take any tough decisions on Syria.
Yeah.
Donald Trump, he's tweeting, and he's putting out finger-pointing elementary school level press releases attacking the previous administration instead of telling us what he is going to do. And I just wonder what would have happened several years ago if the Syrian Air Force had been grounded. When we were asking people on this show, don't we ground the Syrian Air Force to stop the barrel bombs, to stop the weapons of mass destruction, the chemical attacks? I don't want to hear another politician come on this show and say it's hard. We get it. We've heard that for 6 years. Roll the pictures. We will show you what your wringing of hands has done. The international community, Mika, have to come together in some way.
Well, we're going to be watching some challenges with that, because we have a president who has certainly criticized the former president for not acting on this. He is now on the spot. The question is on him. It's on his watch. What's he going to do? What's he going to do about this? And then the bigger question will be, can he do anything, given how he has conducted himself, not only during the campaign, but during these first weeks and months of his presidency? Because we may find that being credible matters. Not lying matters. Words that you say matter. Whether or not you have the support of your party matters. You asked the question earlier, Joe. Why would any Republicans do anything for Donald Trump? Why would anybody in the world community do anything for Donald Trump right now? I'm very worried about this.
And the party especially, why would the party do anything for him when he's taken them to record lows in just 2 months? His numbers are at record lows. But I'll tell you one thing that Donald Trump can't do, if we're going to get anything done, is to blame Barack Obama. That does us no good today than Barack Obama and his administration blaming George W. Bush. You've got to look forward, and you got to give us solutions. And again, I don't know, Mika, how the world community allows the Syrian Air Force to continue flying and dropping chemical weapons on little children and strangling them in view of the entire world. By the way, if you're a policymaker, it's hard is no longer an accepted answer on Morning Joe. Come with solutions or don't come at all. Mika, what do we have next?
Well, still ahead this morning when it comes to approval numbers, Obamacare is far outpacing the two leaders fighting to wipe it out. What that could mean for rank-and-file Republicans still working hard to repeal the law. We'll be right back.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.